Welcome to Healed, Whole, Called, a podcast centered on the healing power of Jesus and what it means to walk in wholeness and calling in real life. This is a space for honest conversations about faith, healing, and restoration, spiritually, emotionally, and mentally, and how those truths meet us in everyday life. This podcast is supported by the Story Discernment Guide, a reflective resource created for those who sense they are carrying a story meant for more, but want clarity before writing, publishing, or sharing it publicly. The guide is designed to help you pause, pray, and discern what you're stewarding without rushing or pressure. You can access it at storycalling.info. And now, here's your host, Wendy Melrose.
Today's guest has lived through a nightmare most of us can't imagine. Matthew Melvin made one impulsive mistake at a Vermont car dealership that spiraled into an 18-month prison sentence. A sentence he believed was made harsher because of his sexual orientation, political beliefs, and late autism diagnosis. Inside prison, Matthew became a target. As a gay, Christian conservative man, he endured relentless bullying, threats, and trauma that nearly cost him his life. His book, Bullied Behind Bars, traces his journey from a lonely childhood to a desperate decision and ultimately to surviving a system that failed to protect him. Matthew's story is one of pain, resilience, and the courage to tell the truth about what really happens behind those walls. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you very much for having me on the show.
You're so welcome. So, let's start with what moved you to steal that car and change the trajectory of your life?
I was in a very depressed state of mind at that time. I was working at a car dealership, Freedom Nissan on Shelburne Road, and was really taken advantage of, bullied by other car salesmen. And I impulsively made the cataclysmic decision to try to sell one of their cars. I got caught, went to court. Judge Jeffrey Crawford and Bob Wolford both decided that I didn't meet the criteria to go through the mental health court, even though I have autism and I'm on the Asperger's spectrum. If I was allowed to complete the mental health court, I may not have a record today. But instead, I went through the regular court, came out, and couldn't find a job. And when I came out, as a result, I used other people's information to try to pass a background check. Got caught. And in 2016, the government indicted me. And I went to federal prison, this time again for 18 months.
So you've actually spent 36 months in prison.
That's correct, yes.
Wow. Two different types of prisons? Or the same one?
That's an interesting question. So some of the facilities I was at the first time, I also went to the second time. The second time, I went to 10 different institutions. The first time I went to, I believe, 2.
Wow. What's the even though it's not quite related to the core topic of the podcast, but I'm super curious, what made them move you 10 times?
I was writing a lot of grievances. I was targeted because I was gay. The inmates would lie to the guards and tell them that I tried to proposition them. They would put me in solitary confinement. I would call my lawyer, write to my family. So I was not a inmate that just kept quiet.
Sure. So you advocated for yourself.
I've always advocated for myself.
That's good. That's good. So, well, now you've been out since for the last 7 years?
Correct.
And how has God moved in your life to share this testimony to change the lives of others? So just kind of share us more about that, your testimony and how it changes lives.
In August 2015, I was driving on 495 in the middle lane, going 72 miles an hour, which is much slower than I normally drive. I've been known to go 130.
Woo! That's a
when a
little bit
Lexus
heavy.
SUV came down an embankment and literally crossed in front of my car. But by the grace of God, within seconds, I was saved. And that was the event, that life-saving event that caused me, instead of putting Jesus in the passenger seat, that I needed to have Jesus start steering the course. It's that song, Jesus Take the Wheel by Miss Carrie Underwood, that amazing song. And that's what I was missing. I was one of those people, I was a lukewarm Christian. I had one foot in the water, one foot on the beach. And Jesus doesn't like that. Jesus wants you to either be cold or hot, not lukewarm.
Right. So that all happened before the prison.
Correct. But I think it's important to remember that the crime I committed was back in 2009.
Oh,
I was
okay.
living a crime-free life between then. But I was still a lukewarm Christian. I was still, until I had that near-death experience, that was the pivotal point that I needed to stop lying, stop stealing, stop being dishonest, and live a more godly lifestyle.
Okay. And now, all these years later, how is that transforming into, what you're doing now?
Well, my ideal forum would be to speak about my testimony, but obviously it's difficult because nobody knows who I am and it's hard to get started. So, that's what I'd like to do is share my testimonies with big groups of people so that nobody has to go through what I went through.
Yeah. And when when you say that God saved you from the car wreck, and then so you were, okay, let's rewind the timeline because I think I got it a little mixed up. So when you stole the car and sold it, that was in 2009?
No, that was in 2004.
Oh, four.
Right.
Oh, and so then, but you spent time in prison later on. So it took them that long to process that?
No. In 2004, I went to prison for 18 months.
Okay. All
And
right.
when I got out, I couldn't pass a background check. So in 2009, I used other people's information to pass a background check.
Oh, and then you went back to prison again. And then the
The
accident was,
government pursued me for 6 years, went to 10 grand juries, and spent about $500,000 going after me. Yes.
well, it'd be nice if they would have spent money going after some people that we know. I'm not dismissing crime, but it'd be nice if they spent just as much money going after some of the other people in the world that, would be nice if they would be held accountable for bigger crimes.
Absolutely. No question. I mean, there's clearly a double system.
Yeah.
There's rules for the rich and famous and Democrats, and then there's a rule for everybody else.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And so, all right. So then 2009, they pursued you for 6 years. You are then that's when you went into prison, and now you've been out for the last, what would you say, 5, 6 years?
7
And
years.
7 years. And now the accident was in 2015, you said?
I didn't have an accident. I was saved. I was protected by God. I came in
Yeah.
within seconds of being killed.
So that was your wake up moment.
Correct. Yes.
Wow. Yeah, I get it. I had a similar situation a couple weeks back where I don't even know how my kids and I got through unscathed without someone completely annihilating us but it was like the only way to find that out is to ask heaven when I get up there, be like, hey, can I see the footage from that? Because this car was coming out of nowhere, going through all the different lanes and missed everybody. It doesn't even make any sense. It had to have been the hand of God. So I understand that completely. And now, how would you share, what have you been, so when you were in prison, let's go back to there because I know that you said there was some unfair things that had happened. Were you ever able to share the gospel with anybody?
I was able to talk to a few people about Jesus, but I didn't, when I was in prison, I was sharpening my saw. I was studying the Bible. So I was not at a position where I felt that I had the knowledge base
Okay.
to really have an in-depth conversation.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in prison, I went to all of the Bible studies, whether so any volunteer that came in, whether it was Jehovah's Witness, Scientology, Christian Science, and then the Catholics, and then the Christian volunteers that came in, because I wanted to get exposed to what everybody else is saying. And
Mm-hmm.
if you can't help somebody if they're in a cult, if you don't know what they're teaching, I
Right,
can't
right.
help somebody find Jesus if I don't know what's in the Bible. So I didn't have the experience at that point to feel comfortable bringing people to God like I do today.
Sure. Okay. Well, that makes sense. I mean, and what's funny is that sometimes we're given opportunities to share before we're even ready. And, um, did that happen? We know when you were finally, the Lord's like, hey, it's time to start sharing, Matt. You know enough. Did you ever have that
I
a
think there were
moment?
some points, but I didn't. Uh, it was hard for me to figure out what somebody's motives were
Mhm.
because there were a lot of guys, Wendy, that would come to the Bible study to trade drugs. So or to hang out with friends, they're not really there for the right reasons.
Mm,
People are in prison because they're deceptive, they're dishonest, they're
sure.
not upstanding citizens. A lot of people in prison are there because they're drug dealers, they're murderers, they're and so to turn that tide or to switch that off is very tricky. So, the guy might say, yeah, I'm here for God, but then he'll go back in his cell and, you know, engage in drug activity.
Right. Well, now that you're out of prison, are you doing anything to try to change the system so that discrimination doesn't happen, or is that something that is an impossible feat?
If I thought that I could make an impact, I surely would. I don't think that the system will ever change.
Yeah. And is that just in Vermont or you think everywhere?
No, nationwide.
Yeah.
Nationwide.
Um, so
People are, prosecutors, police officers, judges are all incentivized to get convictions.
sure.
The the federal government has a 96% conviction rate in the federal system.
Hmm.
There's an old saying that says a grand jury will indict a ham sandwich.
I've not heard that one before. That's interesting. So, um, except for when it goes against their own.
Right.
So, as we could see what's going on with the whole national drama of releasing of documents and people being held accountable
Right. And it's
without the
been an uphill battle for at least 10 plus years to get
sure.
the names of Jeffrey Epstein's. And if this was regular citizens, it would have come out long, long ago.
Oh,
But
sure.
because it's high level lawmakers, politicians, people, billionaires, they don't want their names to be exposed. I mean, we just saw what happened at Harvard. A man was employed by Harvard and his name was exposed, and then he is now resigned.
Right, right, right. Right. But again, he would be more considered a layperson than a high influential political person.
Correct.
So
Yes.
he's held accountable, but any of the
Right.
people in Washington, yeah, good luck. I want to see it happen. I really do. But
We as the American people have the right to know.
when it's not even just about writing the no, it's actually watching them go to prison
Correct.
and keeping
Yes.
them there, not just
Correct.
house arrest.
Right.
So, right. Um, Now, in your book, Bullied Behind Bars, share with us the what the heart behind that. Obviously we understand with the title, Bullied Behind Bars, but God brought you through that.
God will bring you through anything. God doesn't give us anything we can't handle.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the system may have had my body, they didn't have my mind.
Mm.
They never, even when I was in solitary confinement with other people that were in solitary confinement, screaming their head off, pounding the doors, I still found calmness and time to read my Bible and pray.
Well, when you were in that solitary confinement, did you experience the Holy Spirit joining you in that place?
Absolutely, no question. I can't do anything without the Holy Spirit.
Hmm. Yeah. And did you, I mean, because honestly, I mean, as much as it would be lonely to be in solitary confinement, it's where you were the safest.
I was the safest. Yes, nobody could attack me. I was protected, even though I was locked in 23 hours a day.
Hmm.
It really gave me the ability to reflect, to read, to pray, to fast, to practice all of those
Hmm.
things that I wasn't doing on the outside world.
Right. Right. It's kind of like the similar to the story of Joseph, right? He was accused of something he didn't do, but still spent time in prison, years in prison.
Right, right.
And
But yet he was given that coat. And because of what happened, both of his sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, were both given a double portion.
hmm
And even though he was accused, he was second in command in Egypt under Pharaoh, he still forgave his brothers for concocting a plan
right, right, right,
and going behind his back and lying about it.
right. Now, do you find um forgiveness of those, obviously we all take personal responsibility for our part of the consequences that we face in life, but then those who have treated us or bullied us, like you behind bars, have you forgiven everyone who's hurt you?
I have. I mean, I forgive, but I don't forget.
Sure, there's
I
a
think there's a
difference.
key difference between that.
Sure. And there's a way for like obviously you're able to speak about it today with strength and valor. So you've clearly forgiven and healed.
I have. I mean, I have to take I took personal responsibility for what happened. You know,
Hmm.
it's that old saying in the Bible that says, when you sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind.
Right. Right. And what encouragement do you have for anyone that could be going through, or they have a loved one who's going through something very similar to yours, where they're being held accountable, they're happy to deal with the consequences, but there's some unjust bullying or things happening in the background that they need encouragement to help their loved one or themselves get through.
Pray, get in the word, go to a local church, talk about what your issues are. Don't isolate, don't keep quiet, talk about what's going on.
Is there any sort of groups that anyone can join, whether online or in person, that you had found to be the most helpful at all?
I've looked at a lot of men's groups. It's challenging, at least in my experience with men, because men oftentimes don't want to go to the deep end of the pool. They are
Sure.
very comfortable talking about weather, sports, all that stuff that doesn't really matter, but they
Mhm.
really don't understand or have the capacity to want to go to the deep end of the pool. And I would say the other thing is they're not able to identify the six emotions. Sachet, sad, angry, scared, happy, excited, and the T is tender. I don't like that word, so I substitute it for loving. Those are the six emotions. And I've done men's work, and it's incredible when I'm listening to other men check in that will say, I'm full sachet. There's no way that you can be six vastly different emotions all at the same time. I could be six vastly different emotions throughout an entire week, perhaps, but
All right.
not at an exact moment. And that's what we teach people at these men's weekend is in this moment right now, how are you feeling? And a lot of men aren't able to do that. And then the second part is the context. What's the context behind each of those emotions? And men are very stoic and don't want to open up about what's going on with them.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't help any. We live in a society that doesn't give men the freedom, even though I feel like it's coming, but there needs to be a way where they can share in safety, but also be still viewed as strength. Because men don't want to give up. Hey, I've got these 6 emotions. Does that mean I'm now weak?
Absolutely not. I mean, I have a lot of friends, and I think the sadness piece is really missing from their life. They
Hmm.
are very quick to get angry. And
Oh yeah.
to me, anger is a secondary emotion. There's a first emotion that comes first, usually sadness, that
Hmm.
comes first. And then because the sadness is not addressed, it escalates to anger.
Sure. No, that's good. And well, what recommendations do you have to help them deal with the sadness?
To not feel like, I'm a man, I can't cry, I can't show emotion. It's really important to show emotion. Look, I come from a family that's very, very stoic, and I am the only one who actually shows emotions. And it's helped me to deal with everything in my life. If I was a stoic, I wouldn't be able to handle everything that went on in my life, or it would come out in violence.
Well, sure. Yeah, you would have just bottled it up and ignored it, and then it would have exploded.
Right, exactly.
Um, so I know that you've said that it's hard for men to have those type of emotions and even find a place to be able to share. And I've even had my husband where I'm like, hey, go try to find a men's group. He'll go for a couple weeks, doesn't connect, and then he leaves right away, doesn't go back. And I'm like, how are you going to make friends and connections if you don't put in the effort?
Right. Well, I think it's really important that nothing ventured, nothing gained. The people who get the most of it are open to being vulnerable, open to sharing, open to
Right.
connecting. But the guys who come to the weekend or come to the group and just want to sit on the sideline and not say anything are not going to get any help.
Right. It's so true. I mean, it's the same with females and married people,
Correct.
couples, all the different things. It's like, you can ignore what's going on or you can grow, or you can push in or you can just fall away. And it's those who press into the Lord and how he wants us to be acting. Just like I was in a group this morning and she goes, we need to remember the Bible is our reflection. We need to reflect the Bible. We need to be like Christ, to be in his image. And so to remember that those promises that are in there are true.
All of the promises are true.
That's right. That's right. And, I think that so often, especially if we've been in the spirit of religion, religiosity, and churches that are all about fire and brimstone and, or all grace or all fire, instead of a good blend,
Right,
you
which
know,
brings back to an interesting topic. There is such thing as healthy anger. Look, when the servants were selling things in the temple, going
mhm,
against God's word, God, Jesus, flip the tables upside down. That is healthy anger.
right.
But there's also unhealthy anger. And I think oftentimes we're seeing unhealthy anger come out because sadness or frustration is not dealt with properly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's so good. Um, Well, I'd love for you to, I know we already kind of talked about encouragement. We kind of talked about encouragement for um people who have been treated unfairly. What encouragement, and I'd love for you to have one or both, like I mentioned before we started, to encourage men or pray over the men who are listening, or even the wives and the women out there. How can we empower our men through encouragement and prayer? And you can either do an encouragement or do a prayer or do both.
I would encourage people to reach out to find a group of men locally or women that they can talk to that are open to being vulnerable, to sharing, and being open to receiving feedback, open to hearing stuff that you may not want to hear. There's an old saying that we talk about, it's called itchy ears. People want to hear how wonderful you are and what a pleasure it is to be in front of you. A lot of people don't want to hear this truth. And what I've learned in my 2.5 years of doing men's work is use statements like this. When you do X, it makes me feel blank. That's putting ownership on how I feel given a situation. It's very easy to use you, we, they statements. It's a much more powerful to use the I statements. When I do this, then this happens. Because my experience is very different from what everybody else's experiences are. And one trigger for me is when I hear guys sharing and I hear we, or you. That's a red flag that this person doesn't want to take ownership about their life. They want to just live in a vacuum and pretend that, they're protected and they're, nothing, they're excluded from all of what goes on in their life. And it's very easy to do, but it doesn't show empowerment. If I make statements about me, then I can make changes. If I use you, we, they, there's no changes that need to be made because the you and we doesn't include me.
Right. That's good. That's good. Well, I really appreciate this time. Do you have any final words for our audience?
I do. My book is available on Amazon, Bullied Behind Bars, a gay Christian Trump supporter goes to prison. I'm on social media, Instagram, Bullied Behind Bars, Facebook, Matthew.Melvin.5621, X, Bars Bullied. My website is bulliedbehindbars.com, and you can also email me, bulliedbehindbars@gmail.com. I'd love to see what I can do and help and coach as much as I can.
That's so awesome. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for sharing your heart and your passion with us today. To our listeners, remember your story isn't over and you are not disqualified by what you've been through. And with Jesus Christ, you are healed, whole, and called. Thanks again. Till next time.
If today's conversation stirred something in you, a memory, a question, or a quiet sense of calling, I invite you to honor that. You can follow Healed, Whole, Called on the platform you're listening on. And if this episode resonated, leaving a review helps these conversations reach others who may need them. If you know someone walking a similar path, consider sharing this episode with them. And if you're carrying a story or testimony and feel a nudge to do something more with it, the Story Discernment Guide was created for you. It's a reflective resource designed to help you pause, pray, and gain clarity before taking any next step. You can access it at storycalling.info. Thank you for being here and for stewarding what you've been given.